Dylan's going to do a dramatic reading for us. Why not?
That lady was really bad at reading.
Yeah, she like
Yeah.
every
Yeah,
dude, I swear.
Yeah, there was
every third question.
There was nice little interludes in between the parts.
It was so weird. It didn't fit with the story whatsoever. And she played it for like 3 seconds and then stopped.
Well, no, she actually plays it for like 5 minutes at the beginning, and I cropped that part out. So there's just a little. Yeah. So maybe next year I'll do a dramatic reading. Maybe Dylan and I will pop one, and then generations of people from here on out will benefit from it.
Really bad on that. I was like, I'm trying to enjoy the story, and it's just like, I'm like, come on, I'm trying to answer the question. Every word she said.
I try to enjoy the classes. I mean, I deal with you, you deal with her. It's all, you know.
I know. And she played this weird music in between. I know. That's what we've been talking
Yeah,
about.
what was that? Where were you?
Yeah, what were you added?
Thanks, Dan. Thanks. All right, so number 1. How is the first paragraph? How's the opening paragraph of the short story different from what you would expect to find in a factual article? I know this isn't part of the question, but since we're dealing with a short story, from a viewpoint tone standpoint, what is the word that we would now associate with a short story, with a poem, generally with a piece of fictional work, based on the introductory notes that we were doing before? Not short, but it would begin with an S. If you have, it's going to have be subjective. So a short story is going to be, more often than not, I don't want to make it sound like it's 100% guarantee, but more often than not it's going to be subjective, which means that there is going to be some emotion coming across. If you're dealing with a factual article, the majority of the time it's not going to be subjective, but it is going to be objective, meaning that there is not going to be a whole lot of emotion that would be taking place. The answers that most of you are coming up with certainly ties into this kind of subjective thing. How's the first paragraph of the short story different? What ends up being a focal point of the first paragraph? So the focal point is Azucena, the girl who is stuck in the mud. The focal point of the paragraph is Azucena, whereas in a factual article, what would we expect the focal point to be? Or what would we expect the main content to be about? Or the context of the paragraph to be about? Not one person, but... Okay, but whereas in a factual article, the focus would probably be on the 20,000 victims that we have, as opposed to the one victim that we have present within the story. So the fact that you're focusing on one character, Azucena, certainly is going to make this different than a factual article including 20,000 people. A factual article is going to give you backdrop. Here's what happened. There was not an explosion, but an eruption on the volcano. Caused avalanche, mudslide. Town has basically been destroyed. Now you have a bunch of people, who are struggling to get by, or worse, you have many folks who are dead at this point. Over 20,000, 23,000 in the number in real life. Anything else add to the subjectiveness of that paragraph besides the fact that her name gets brought up, or the focal point? From like a diction standpoint, word choice, what kind of words get used specifically in that paragraph that would be kind of emotionally charged? Like individual words in that first paragraph that would have some connotation that's going to make a reader most likely feel bad for the people there. Okay. Okay, so yeah, and the phrase would certainly work, and most of these words are coming from that phrase: weeping, orphans. What was the second one? Or the wails? You said there of the injured. Like those are individual words that you probably won't come across quite as much in a factual article. Tyler, did you have another one? Okay. You know, the little girl obstinately clinging to life became the symbol of tragedy. So that idea of clinging to life would be an emotionally charged statement phrase that you're probably not going to see quite as much in a factual article. So certainly the fact that it focuses on as you've seen, perfectly fine as an answer, but pay attention too to how like word choice can play a big part in why something is becoming subjective as opposed to objective. You could have the word injured, you could have the word orphans in a factual article, but they're not going to do the wailing, the weeping, the clinging to life quite as much if it's just a factual article that you're looking at. Number 2 is a little tricky because I think we kind of lose sight of it. Literally, what point of view is the story being told in? It's not third, it's first. It's first person point of view. Remember, first person, what pronoun do we associate with first person? I. Me, my. Who's our narrator? It's Rolf's girlfriend. So they do get married. Well, it's a fictional story. It's a series of short stories. So in the fictional account, they get married in a different part of the book. But she is the one that is telling the story. So she's going I with the unfolding of the events. The majority of the events seem to be third person because you're getting all these references to Rolf, Azucena. It's not I tried to get a pump for her, or I was talking to her through the night, but Rolf was talking through the night. But that narrator is still first person with the girlfriend. Third person is usually when you're going to have he, she, that kind of stuff. Second person would be use of you, your. So when you get an instruction manual that's telling you how to program something, that's going to be second person program. If you ever had to give a how-to speech, how do you draw red pictures in your notebook? Jack would go through the steps and go first, you don't pay attention. Next, you take the cap off your red pen. Then, how do you miss a math test? Show up late. Take it 9th period. It's easy, hopefully. And then there's Nate's test. Not as easy. Sorry. Oh well. Good luck. Gavin, how do you handle your emotional life? You don't? How does Rolf handle his emotional life? How does his profession affect his emotional life? What do you think?
He originally told his girlfriend that he wasn't brave, but whenever he was on camera, he didn't show it. Here is what is going on.
Okay, so he is, yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Keep in mind, he's a news reporter. So who sees him? Everyone, pretty much all the time. He's constantly on TV. Even though he is there, what separates him from the story? What separates him from the events that are actually taking place? Most of the time. Maybe not in this case. You run that by me. Okay, because he has a division between real life and I would say his work life with the camera. Yes, he is seeing things unfold, but a lot of the times the way he is seeing things unfold is also through the eye of the lens, through the camera, which even though you are there, you don't feel that you're quite attached to it the same way. He's certainly there in the aftermath, but he is not there when the event is actually unfolding. So it's a way for him to kind of have a division, or maybe a word that would be a little bit more significant is he becomes detached from the emotional life. And this would go back to what Julia and Dylan were both saying, in the sense that he can't really show his emotions on camera. If you're a news reporter, you have to be objective. If you're a news reporter, you can't go, this horrific event happened to this terrible person, you should all feel terrible for her and bad, and you need to donate money as quickly as you can. Your job is to simply report what is going on. She is trapped. They are looking for a pump. They can't find one yet at this point. So it's a way to not buy into or worry about your emotions quite as much. What's the downside? Well, when tragic things do happen in your life or from your past, like we see from them a little bit later on, you might not be able to handle those quite as much. Josh, you're going to be a reporter? I mean, you're older now. You're getting closer to choosing a career.
I want to be on TV, but not as a reporter.
You'll be a reporter. You're going to go to war-torn areas, natural disasters.
Maybe that's how I'll be an offensive coordinator. I'll start reporting for sports first.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll just happen.
Good. Totally opinion question, but why do you think reporters would want to risk their lives to cover battles? Or why would a reporter want to be the person who's covering the hurricane that's coming in on the coast, and you're standing there with a little wimpy umbrella and a rain jacket as rain is coming at you sideways and you're about to fly off? Money?
There's no way people do that. Why would anybody want to just stand there? Like, you were doing that. Then what?
Because you get paid for it.
Don't do that.
What's that?
You get paid for it.
I said money and views.
No, you.
So far as people watching you?
That's exactly
Well,
what I
and if you get more, as you are getting viewers, whether it be online, whether it be likes, whether it be on TV, you are gaining fame. So fame, fortune. And I think there's another thing, because if you are going into an area where there are disasters, where there are battles, you are going into a place that's dangerous.
Makes you look man clown.
Yeah, to be in letting people be safe.
Okay, yeah, you could. Julia's answer is saying about informing people how to stay safe. That could be more of like a benevolent thing where you actually want to like help people, keep people educated. I think also if you're going into these places where there are battles, where there are disasters, there is adrenaline. Why do you go there? Because there's a drive to be there. There's the urge to go there. I want to be in a situation that's going to be dangerous. I want to go in a situation that these other people don't want to be in. Gavin sees me on TV going, why would anyone want to do that? I want to do that because no one else wants to do that, because of the rush that could potentially go along with it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily all of these. Maybe you're the person covering the hurricane because you're low man on the totem pole at the network, and you're the only one who will go cover it. But certainly there would be folks who like to put themselves not necessarily in harm's way, but you want to be in a situation that other people don't want to handle. There'd be a rush. Connor, I know you're in a bad spot here. You don't have yours in front of you. But we know that Azucena says that not only is it rubble that's pinning her down, but also arms and legs of her siblings, family members, things like that. Connor, how would you say the details about the other family members of Azucena's life affect the mood of the story? So knowing that it's not only dirt, rubble, concrete, but her brothers and sisters that are pulling her down as well, how does that affect mood?
It makes it seem like really dark and depressing.
Okay, so a dark, depressing, overly sympathetic. And so, in a situation where you would go, how can it be much worse? Well, if you were just simply stuck, it's worse knowing that your family's already down there, that your family's already dead. And you could argue that knowing that you very soon could be, joining them in a similar plight.
2 days in a row.
Why you keeping track?
So when I write it up,
External conflict. What's our external conflict? So, Azucena versus nature. You could also say Azucena versus time, that as the water continues to go up, she has to deal with how much time do I have left until that pump can potentially arrive. No, they don't, because we would be here for a long time with it. And you know how my handwriting is. But you're getting pretty good at doing them, so I appreciate that.
I just because. Which is very because.
Okay. I'll come back for him. Number 7. Josh, what'd you do? This is I think question that sometimes folks aren't sure what direction to go with.
This was a very educated guess. I said.
Educated or uneducated?
Probably uneducated.
Okay.
Okay, so I said the theme is never give up. I don't know. This is an iffy theme. I said, quote, like to help this is, it says the warm liquid revived her and she began telling him about her small life. Like she's like holding on to the last bit of hope.
Okay.
I don't know.
She actually did give up.
Huh?
She did give up.
Yeah, but she's trying not to. No.
Any other ideas for themes? Not saying you're wrong with it, but I got a feeling we got some multiple. Like, you're saying she did give up.
Yeah.
So what becomes the theme?
Give up.
Give up before it gets too bad.
Why would you just want to be stuck in that mud for 3 days?
Dying.
I'd rather give it up in the first hour.
There's more. We can't just simply go. The theme's going to be give up.
Why be stuck in the
Julia.
Okay.
Okay. Listen up. So this whole, Josh, when you say never give up, are you thinking Rolf Azucena? Both.
Oh, yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay. Julia, you said about like helping others. That's going to be Rolf.
Oh.
Okay. Nate Belak, you passed your math test? I didn't hear. No. Not confident, Nate. Nate,
Wait a minute.
yeah, but you didn't take the honors test that he did.
Hey,
You gave up.
I'm kind of confused. So if he was looking for a pump that time and no one could get to him, why didn't he just leave and leave someone there to watch her and take the helicopter?
Probably because at that point he has such an emotional connection that if you're in that kind of situation, if you leave her, and whether you do get the pump or don't, but she dies before you get back, you probably feel personally responsible. He still could feel personally responsible for it. But yeah, you have cargo certainly coming in and out, but
Yeah, like his cameraman that was doing.
oh, he's trying. And they do get a pump because like the girlfriend's able to finally locate one. And keep in mind too,
She asked him not to leave.
part of it is like that fictional account that's going along with it. Shh. Gavin, shh.
She told him not to leave.
Back to Nate's math test. He's not sure if he passed. Maybe he didn't. Hopefully he did. Sometimes, what is life?
Life is a pizza.
Life's unfair. Life is a struggle. Not all the time, hopefully. But certainly you'll have these instances. What does storytelling do? Not, and certainly within the context of this story, storytelling, why does he tell her stories? To try to keep her mind off things? To distract her from the issue at hand. Storytelling can be a way to try to sustain or encourage a person. So if something terrible happens to someone and you talk to a friend about it or a mentor or whatnot, sometimes they'll go, well, when I was 16, Josh, here's something that happened to me. It doesn't mean that it's going to make Josh's life perfectly better. It doesn't mean it's going to fix all the problems. but it's a story that is meant to at least kind of offer encouragement to sustain her. Does it help her survive? No. Does it give her some peace and comfort and reassurance that Rolf is there with her that time, and maybe that, you know, her plight, while disastrous, is something that she can better accept? Yes. So storytelling has the ability to at least sustain or encourage someone when they're going through a situation that could be a struggle or is going to be unfair. And I think a point where you really start to figure out that this is not going to end very well is going to be here with question number 8. What's being compared in the simile involving the telescope and the star? What does this comparison suggest? And this came up in the video that you were taking a look at. Essentially, and you can paraphrase it, what's the simile that Ralph's girlfriend mentions? Looking at her was like looking at a what through a telescope? At a star. Every star that you look at in the night sky, it's not necessarily dead yet, but what are you seeing when you look at a star? You're looking at the past of it. If that star is 100 million light years away, that means that Brendan is looking at the star how it looked 100 million years ago. If you see a star that's 2 light years away, you're looking at what that star looked like 2 years ago. So unless you're looking at a star that's close, like the sun, you're essentially looking at the past. You're looking at a star while it was still alive, before it explodes, whatever the case may be. So looking at her is like looking at a star that is fading. You're basically seeing her while she is still alive, but the comparison would suggest that ultimately Azucena will fade. And when we say fade, essentially we know that that means that she is going to die. In a second. So ultimately, Azucena will fade or Azucena will die, that you're kind of looking at a depiction of her, but you're not looking really at her. And again, you're seeing her on TV, and as things are on TV, they're recorded. You're not necessarily in the real time. You're seeing what she looks like at that time, but you might not know how she truly is going to be at this point. Number 9, how does the journalist's equipment contrast ironically with the availability of other supplies in the disaster area? And this is kind of what Dylan was getting to. They have all this equipment coming in. They have helicopters. They have the ability to get stuff, but they cannot get a pump. So it's ironic that a pump is a simple piece of equipment that they are unable to get. What this theme would really kind of ultimately support, again, you go back to that life is unfair, life is a struggle. Some things you just simply cannot deal with or really even kind of offer any kind of explain. Connor, you can go restroom. Number 10, how might the parallels between Katerina and Azucena hint at a theme of the story? Who's Katerina? Sister. Katerina's sister. What's Katerina's circumstance?
She's like running away.
She's running away from her father. You get, she is mentally challenged. She is hiding from her father, and you get the sense that father is ashamed of her and what it's done to the family, and physically takes it out on her. What can Katerina do to change her circumstance? I mean, temporary, but ultimately, what can she do? Nothing. What can Azucena do to change her circumstance? Nothing. They are both stuck in circumstances that are beyond their control. There are some things that you cannot do. Oh, but that's not a decision that you make. But not in their specific
I would say
circumstances.
that decision is limited.
I would say in these two situations that they're dealing with, they're both dealing with something that's beyond their control. I mean, she dies. I don't think that she decides to die. I think she comes to grips with this is what will ultimately happen. It's beyond my control. But both girls, both innocent girls, are trapped. One is physically with Azucena. One is more in a family situation. You could argue mentally trapped, but are trapped in circumstances beyond their control. We had the question earlier about how does his profession affect his emotional life? Well, it causes a separation. Chances are he probably doesn't think about Katerina maybe on a daily basis, but when he has an encounter with Azucena and sees that she is a girl trapped in a circumstance beyond her control, then the floodgates open up because he starts thinking of Katerina all over again. And why, and this would even kind of go back to, him getting the pump and what Jack mentioned. Why can't he go get the pump? Because then he leaves her. And what does he have guilt for? Leaving her behind. He's getting out of the situation. He's growing up in Europe during the Holocaust and was getting pictures flooding back of, in his mind of situations that were going on. He's going off to South America to get away from it. Now he doesn't want to leave someone else behind in a similar circumstance. Maybe the same ending ends up happening, but at least he did what he could to try to help out as much as he could. And then number 11 here, what does the president really offer? Nothing. I mean, you're there to wave. You're there to at least your face is there, your picture's there. But what's the purpose in including this scene? That really, when it comes down to it, you can't depend on a lot of people in order to actually get things done. It's something that you'd have to do. For number 12, paradox is a seeming contradiction that reveals the truth. What's paradoxical about the narrator's conclusion in the first paragraph on this page as you're getting to the end? What do we have for this one? What we got for some answers for 12? Paradox. What's the truth that we end up having? You can't. You can't save everything, and sometimes, you have to be willing to accept, in this case, death. You have to be willing to accept failure. You have to be able to cope with not having the results you want. But what happens to Rolf and Azucena by accepting death? They're ultimately freed. She doesn't have to suffer anymore, and by accepting her death, it also helps him kind of accept what was happening with his sister, so he's freed from those emotions that were kind of holding him in check all these years. Now he's able to hopefully try to be able to move on with the rest of his life. Monday when we come back, I know we didn't answer the questions for it, but on Monday we're going to take a look at this article that was on page 315. We're going to do a little bit of a compare-contrast between elements that you would see in a subjective piece versus objective piece, very much like the stuff that was going on with question number 1. Active readings, keep it in the study guide portion of the notebook. Weekend, you don't have any homework assignments that you have to worry about. Enjoy. Have fun. Yeah.